King Charles is turning a blind eye, but King William won't.
Prince Harry, alone, boarding a jet from California.
Enough is enough.
No entourage.
I did think it would happen.
No film crew.
If Harry and Meghan are watching, they should be incredibly concerned, because if it's this simple to take away Prince Andrew's titles, one day it could be this easy to take away Harry and Meghan's titles.
No visible security detail beyond essentials. A quiet departure that signaled something serious had shifted. Within hours, flight monitors confirmed the destination, London, and by then, palace officials had already begun moving into action.
Wanting to exploit their royal titles, I think it stinks. Let them go off and be, celebrities, that's fine. But don't do it in the name of our royal family.
Earlier that morning, a palace statement confirmed the initiation of a constitutional review into the use of royal titles by non-working members. The announcement, phrased in the palace's characteristically formal language, carried a tone of deliberate neutrality, but its implications were unmistakable. In the structured world of royal communication, reviews of this kind are rare and only occur when policy, not personality, is at issue.
Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and their children could be set to lose their royal title.
Individuals with knowledge of internal planning say the decision to confirm the review was made after months of quiet consultation among senior advisors. It was framed as a modernization effort, a term historically used by the palace when redefining duties, consolidating roles, or updating centuries-old customs to fit contemporary expectations. That framing suggests this is less about interpersonal tension and more about institutional sustainability. Those familiar with the process note that this review follows established constitutional practice.
Prince William has in the past fortnight seized control of the British monarchy from a weak and dying King Charles, and that spells very bad news for Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Archie, and Lily.
Under guidance from the Privy Council, such measures are evaluated for their long-term impact on representation, hierarchy, and public funding. The inclusion of non-working royals in this discussion is notable. It signals a formal distinction between ceremonial association and active duty. It also mirrors prior adjustments, such as the removal of certain honorary military roles when members step away from public service. Within hours of the statement, staff across multiple royal households were placed on coordination alert. Departments responsible for correspondence, heraldry, and ceremonial records were reportedly instructed to prepare for status realignment scenarios. In administrative terms, that means ensuring official documents, invitations, and communications reflect any forthcoming changes in order of precedence. Each time the monarchy has undertaken such reviews, whether during the 1990s divorces or earlier reign restructurings, this procedural alignment step has followed. For Prince Harry, the optics were immediate and symbolic. Sources close to his circle say he was informed of the review shortly before it went public, prompting his sudden flight to London. The speed of his response suggested both surprise and urgency. No public statement was made from his office, but those familiar with his team's coordination say communications were deliberately suspended to avoid missteps while the situation is under review. That phrase has appeared before in palace documents when sensitivity is paramount. Observers who monitor royal digital infrastructure notice subtle but telling movements soon after. Minor adjustments to website, listings, and reordered placement within sections describing active members of the family. These changes often precede formal announcements. In institutional terms, they serve as groundwork, ensuring that when official wording is finalized, the public interface aligns seamlessly.
So trust me, Harry and Meghan right now should be very afraid, because it is a matter of when, not if.
Across government circles, sources familiar with constitutional protocol confirmed that advisors to the king had engaged with parliamentary liaisons in what was described as routine consultation. This is the procedural backbone of royal governance. Elected officials are informed when matters of titles and privileges intersect with constitutional norms. While the monarchy retains control over ceremonial designations, its communications with Parliament ensure that decisions align with broader governance principles. As Prince Harry's jet crossed into British airspace, those observing the situation understood what was at stake. This was not about family disagreement or media perception. It was a convergence of personal history and institutional policy. The review represented something larger, a quiet recalibration of how royal identity operates in a modern constitutional framework. And as his plane descended toward Heathrow under a clouded London sky, one fact had already become clear within palace corridors. What began as personal estrangement had become a matter of royal governance. The conversation that awaited him would not be emotional, it would be procedural. When Prince Harry arrived in London, the usual signs of royal protocol, convoys, security staff, and photographers were noticeably reduced. The palace made no public mention of his arrival, which, according to individuals familiar with internal planning, was intentional. It aligned with a quiet engagement protocol used during sensitive or unresolved family matters. That detail alone revealed the mood inside the institution. Controlled, deliberate, and cautious. Sources close to the household confirmed that Harry's visit included a scheduled private meeting at Clarence's house. The discussion, they say, focused on the scope and purpose of the title review that had been confirmed just hours earlier. This meeting was not classified as a personal reconciliation. It was recorded under administrative consultations, the same internal category used when formal roles or honors are reassessed. That distinction, while subtle, is significant. It suggests the palace viewed this encounter as procedural business, not family mediation.
Terrible news for Harry and Meghan here is that William can now take away everything, their titles, without an act of parliament.
Individuals briefed on the meeting's context described the tone as restrained. The king reportedly emphasized that the review process was already underway and could not be reversed without contradicting institutional guidance. In royal procedure, once a constitutional review is initiated under Privy Council oversight, it proceeds according to fixed steps. Reversing or delaying it would require justification that could withstand parliamentary scrutiny. That's why insiders insist the palace is treating this review less as discipline and more as modernization policy. Those familiar with the family's dynamic note that this language, modernization, has been used before. During prior reign adjustments, including the redefinition of royal patronages in the late 1990s and again during the 2010s, the same terminology appeared in internal correspondence. It signals not punishment, but reorganization to ensure continuity. The fact that it has now resurfaced underscores that this is not reactive, but systemic. Meanwhile, support staff in multiple departments began synchronizing communications. Whenever a review touches on constitutional precedent, each royal office, from ceremonial scheduling to official correspondence, must update records simultaneously. This ensures that future publications, state documents, and website listings remain consistent with the Crown's hierarchy. Insiders involved in the process say this coordination began within hours of Harry's arrival. It's a standard but telling signal that a draft resolution is in development. At the same time, senior advisors reportedly consulted external constitutional specialists to evaluate how the Crown's discretionary authority aligns with parliamentary expectations in modern governance. Historically, such reviews balance two principles: hereditary continuity and responsible public representation. Sources familiar with prior reviews note that the monarchy's approach has increasingly favored the second, prioritizing accountability over automatic entitlement. In practice, this means future title holders may be subject to more formalized criteria than those who inherited them in the past. Observers describe the current moment as an intersection of personal legacy and institutional structure. Harry's situation, while unique in its visibility, reflects a broader recalibration taking place within the monarchy.
The HRH is only given to working royals, senior members of the royal family, because it denotes a level of respect in the public, and also it's not a financial thing. Working royals do not profit, they do not use their names to make money. It's an honour to have an HR.
The Crown is moving toward transparency and role definition, not because of one individual, but because the public's expectation of accountability has evolved. Within that framework, personal preference has limited influence. Those close to the situation say that Harry, aware of these constraints, sought reassurance that his children's positions would remain secure under any revised criteria. The response he reportedly received was careful and consistent. The review would apply universally to all non-working members, and no exceptions could be discussed until the process concluded. That statement, according to experienced palace watchers, follows the same phrasing used during earlier revisions of patronage assignments: neutral, procedural, and deliberately impersonal. By evening, updates across official digital platforms confirmed that the Sussex titles remained intact but positioned beneath working members. It's a minor visual cue but historically accurate. Digital orderings often precede formal announcements by weeks or months. The placement itself carries no legal meaning, but reflects internal consensus about visibility and function. Behind closed doors, however, insiders say the conversation within the household had shifted. What began as a question of duty had become a case study in how the monarchy adapts. The Crown was demonstrating that in an era defined by public accountability and commercial transparency, heritage must operate under modern governance. For those watching closely, that is the true story. This is not the monarchy shrinking, it's the monarchy recalibrating. As daylight returned to London, the story was no longer about speculation. administrative activity inside Buckingham Palace confirmed that the review had advanced into its second stage evaluation by legal and constitutional advisors. Individuals familiar with the procedure say this is the phase where technical language is drafted to define representation parameters, the framework that governs who may publicly use royal designations. In plain terms, it's the rulebook that determines which titles remain active and under what conditions. Those briefed on the process describe it as methodical rather than emotional. Each title is assessed against criteria: contribution to public duties, alignment with constitutional principles, and compliance with transparency expectations. Sources close to royal administration stress that these measures are routine in structure but rare in application.
They are a danger, honestly. Take this lesson from what Fergie and Andrew have done over the past 3 decades and do not let history repeat.
The current review, they note, is the most comprehensive of its kind in several decades. Its scale suggests long-term structural intent, not short-term correction. Documentation reviewed by senior advisors reportedly includes precedents from both domestic and Commonwealth jurisdictions. In previous instances, such as when honorary military appointments were adjusted or roles redefined after retirement, the same constitutional wording appeared: titles shall reflect function. That phrase, when invoked in official drafts, effectively separates personal identity from institutional representation. Individuals familiar with the legal language confirm that a similar approach is now being considered. This method aligns with historic royal adjustments. The most relevant precedent dates back more than a century to the Letters Patent of 1917, when the monarchy narrowed the definition of who may hold princely status. The rationale then, as now, was to preserve clarity and prevent dilution of representation. Scholars familiar with royal law observe that the current review may serve as a modern analog, a reaffirmation of the principle that royal identity follows service, not celebrity. At the same time, coordination between palace departments and government advisors continued quietly. Those familiar with parliamentary procedure confirmed that relevant committees were notified of the ongoing evaluation as required under convention. It does not mean that Parliament will intervene directly, but the involvement of legal consultants ensures that any outcome remains compliant with public accountability standards. Historically, the Crown's ability to modify titles is discretionary, but in the modern constitutional framework, transparency demands broader consultation. Internally, communication across royal offices intensified. Administrative sources report that departments responsible for protocol, ceremonial events, and official correspondence began auditing existing documents that reference the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. This audit, described by staff as standard preparatory practice, ensures consistency if any formal statement is later issued.
Prince William knows that it's not just Andrew and Sarah need to be dealt with. It's Harry, Meghan, Archie, and Lily too.
Past reorganizations, such as the redistribution of patronages or removal of honorary posts, followed identical audit sequences. While these steps might appear bureaucratic, they reveal the direction of the institution. By treating the review as a legal and administrative matter rather than a personal or emotional one, the monarchy signals a shift toward procedural governance. Individuals close to palace operations emphasize that the process is intentionally impersonal. In royal administration, detachment ensures credibility. Decisions must appear consistent, not reactive. Outside royal circles, analysts observing these developments describe them as an example of how modern monarchy maintains authority through quiet reform. Public opinion may fluctuate, but structural integrity relies on predictability. If every title and privilege is anchored to clear criteria, the institution can withstand scrutiny. This is the underlying logic driving the current moment, the idea that the Crown's endurance depends not on personalities, but on policy. For Prince Harry, that shift has profound implications. Sources familiar with his situation suggest that he and his advisors are now aware that this process is unlikely to be reversed or slowed. Once constitutional evaluation enters the drafting stage, outcomes are determined by procedure, not preference. Even if the review concludes without major change, the precedent it establishes, that titles can be reassessed in relation to function, will remain part of royal governance moving forward. Observers who have followed similar royal transitions note that every era has a defining recalibration. For the modern monarchy, this is it. The review underway isn't about removing a name or diminishing a person, it's about defining what royal representation means in the 21st century. And by grounding that definition in law, not sentiment, the institution reinforces its most powerful message, that the Crown is continuous, even when its members change. By the time formal consultations began inside Clarence House, the tension surrounding the review had shifted from speculation to confirmation.
Harry found out at the same moment as the public, and his reaction was instant dread. His stomach dropped. He thought titles were untouchable. Now he's not so sure.
Multiple individuals familiar with the schedule say the king requested a limited meeting with Prince Harry to discuss procedural implications directly. Attendance was restricted to essential advisors only, reflecting the sensitivity of the topic and the stage of the review. This setup, according to palace staff, follows standard protocol whenever a family member is directly affected by a constitutional process. Those briefed on the discussion describe it as orderly but firm. Prince Harry was reportedly informed that the title review was already progressing through formal evaluation channels and could not be halted without undermining its legitimacy. The king's role, under constitutional constraint, was advisory rather than executive. Once the process entered the legal consultation phase, even the monarch's discretion became bounded by established precedent. Individuals aware of the exchange say this point was made explicitly. The review would proceed to ensure that the monarchy's framework remained consistent and accountable. Prince Harry, according to those close to the situation, expressed concern about the broader implications, particularly for his children's future recognition within the royal hierarchy. The response, insiders say, was neutral. The review was to remain universal in scope, applying to all non-working members equally. This phrasing, while emotionally difficult, reflects institutional practice. Uniform criteria preserve fairness and prevent claims of selective enforcement, a lesson the monarchy learned after prior restructurings in past decades. Later that day, the Prince of Wales joined subsequent discussions with senior household advisors. Sources with knowledge of internal policy note that his focus centered on long-term clarity, defining the difference between ceremonial identity and active representation. That distinction has become a cornerstone of modern palace strategy, ensuring that public engagement aligns with institutional responsibility.
Harry and Meghan take their audience for fools. They blame everybody but themselves. They present even the most incendiary of claims with no evidence. And sadly, the impact is real. The royal family is getting damaged. The monarchy is getting tarnished.
Individuals familiar with his position say he has consistently advocated for transparency in roles and expectations, particularly as the monarchy adapts to an era of digital media and global scrutiny. Observers of royal governance view this alignment between the king and his heir as pivotal. Historically, moments of uncertainty have divided the institution's leadership, but this time, the messaging was unified. Representation must reflect service. Palace sources confirm that since early 2023, internal communications have emphasized measurable contribution and reduced overlap between personal ventures and royal symbolism. The timing of this review suggests the palace is now formalizing those principles into policy. Following the meetings, logistical activity within royal administration intensified. Departments responsible for heraldry, patronages, and ceremonial invitations began verifying details in official databases to ensure readiness for any change in precedence. This verification process is standard practice when adjustments may occur. It prevents inconsistencies in documentation and public materials. One administrative official described the atmosphere as calm but focused, adding that precision is essential because once a change is issued, correction is rarely an option. Across the Atlantic, people close to the Sussex household described their approach as evaluative. They were reportedly gathering information through advisors specializing in constitutional law and public relations, aiming to determine how best to respond if the review results in formal recommendations. Those who have worked with the couple in previous communication cycles note that their strategy tends to favor controlled statements released after official documents are finalized. For now, however, no public comment had been issued, consistent with the pattern observed during other institutional reviews involving the crown. Inside palace operations, the broader message to staff remained consistent: discretion, coordination, and continuity. Long-serving courtiers who have managed previous periods of change describe the mood as pragmatic. For them, this is part of the crown's rhythm, periods of expansion followed by consolidation. The focus, they say, is on protecting the monarchy's long-term credibility rather than responding to individual controversies. In the context of royal governance, this approach signals both restraint and resolve. By limiting emotional narrative and emphasizing procedure, the palace demonstrates confidence in its structure. It is not reacting to public commentary or personal appeals, it is implementing a pre-established framework. For Prince Harry, this means the review is no longer a family disagreement. It is now an institutional process governed by policy, timing, and precedent. As one constitutional observer summarized privately, when the monarchy moves in this manner, the outcome is rarely dramatic in presentation, but always significant in impact. In royal terms, the confrontation has already taken place, and from this point forward, the results will unfold through documents, not dialogue. In the days that followed the internal meetings, the palace maintained deliberate silence. Official channels released only one statement, confirmation that the review of royal titles was continuing under constitutional consultation. The wording was restrained, yet the implications were clear. The process had moved beyond private discussion into formal evaluation, a stage where discretion gives way to documentation. Those close to the royal household described the atmosphere as focused and procedural. Senior officials across multiple departments, legal, ceremonial, and communications, were said to be synchronizing records to ensure alignment once final recommendations are issued. This step is critical in monarchy administration. Every update, from invitations to court notices, must reflect the current hierarchy. Individuals familiar with these operations say that precision prevents confusion, particularly when public events require clear identification of royal participants. Observers of royal practice note that such coordinated activity usually signals that outcomes are being finalized. Adjustments of this nature are often implemented gradually. Each department updates its records, followed by subtle website edits and brief public clarifications. The slow pace is intentional. It allows the crown to enact change without spectacle, preserving stability while demonstrating accountability. Sources close to royal advisors confirm that discussions are now centered on codifying new standards for non-working royals. The guiding principle, they say, is to establish transparent boundaries between ceremonial association and personal enterprise. Once completed, this framework could serve as a model for future generations, ensuring that royal identity remains tied to public duty rather than private brand value. Within palace circles, this is described as future-proofing the institution. Across the Atlantic, those familiar with the Sussex household describe a more introspective mood. The couple's advisors are said to be assessing long-term implications rather than immediate response. For their team, the focus is on legal clarity, understanding whether potential adjustments affect inheritance, precedents, or only ceremonial styling. Individuals who have worked with them previously say they are likely to reserve comment until any change becomes official, aligning their strategy with documented policy rather than speculation. In the wider context of British constitutional life, the review represents continuity more than crisis. The monarchy's ability to evolve through quiet correction has long been its defining strength. Historical precedent supports this approach. Every generation has faced a moment where tradition met reform. The current process, although framed by modern communication and global scrutiny, follows the same rhythm. Stability is preserved not by avoiding change, but by managing it through structured, predictable reform. Public sentiment remains divided. Some observers view the review as a necessary modernization, a means to safeguard integrity in an era of media exposure and commercial opportunity. Others see it as a reminder of the distance between family relationships and institutional duty. Both perspectives highlight the same truth. The monarchy's survival depends on its capacity to separate emotion from administration. Inside palace administration, that separation is precisely what defines success. Long-serving officials often describe reform as the quiet work, adjustments implemented without fanfare, sustained through consistency rather than personality. The review of titles fits that description perfectly. No sudden proclamations, no public confrontations, only process, recorded and archived for history to interpret. For Prince Harry, this marks a turning point. Regardless of the review's eventual conclusions, the experience reaffirms that the monarchy functions on principle, not persuasion. Personal legacy remains part of the story, but institutional identity moves according to protocol. Once set in motion, that protocol defines not just one member's status, but the balance between heritage and accountability for decades to come. And that is the enduring revelation of this investigation. Beneath every royal headline lies a system engineered for survival. The crown adjusts quietly, and through those adjustments, it endures. This investigation traced how a single review evolved into a test of royal structure, turning private history into public precedent. Insiders say the next phase could redefine how every royal title functions in the modern era. If you want to follow that transformation as it unfolds, subscribe now. More details are expected once the review's recommendations become public, and when they do, we'll be here to unpack exactly what they mean for the monarchy's future.